Hi there, my name's Danny. This is the 9th module of 10 that I'll be sharing here on YouTube from my full course on Quasar Framework version 1. Welcome to this course module. In this module, we're going to add the ability to edit tasks. So we're going to add a little edit button to each task on the page to do page. And when the user clicks that, we're going to show an edit task modal. And this modal is going to be very similar to the add task modal. So we're also going to break the add task modal down into reusable components. And then we're going to build the edit task modal based on those reusable components. So later on, we're going to add an edit button next to this delete button here, which when we click it will show an edit task dialog, which will allow us to edit the task. And this edit task dialog is going to look basically the same as this add task dialog. It's going to have the title, the close button, and the same fields, name, due date, and due time, and the save button. So before we create this edit task modal, let's break the add task modal down into reusable components. So first of all, let's make sure this add task modal is always showing. So let's open up source, pages, and page to do. And we'll set show add task to true, so that this modal is always showing as we're working on it. Let's open up the add task component and start breaking it up into child components. So we want to open components, tasks, modals, and add task.vue. Okay, so this cue card section here, which has this title and this close button, let's create a child component for that. So inside the modals folder, I'll create a new folder called shared, because these components are going to be shared among the add task modal and the edit task modal as well. And then within that, we'll create a new file called modal header.vue. We'll add the different sections. Now back to add task.vue. I'm going to cut this cue card section and paste it into the modal header.vue. Save that. And now back in the add task.vue, we need to import this component. So we'll scroll down to the bottom, and after methods, we'll add a components object. And in that, we'll specify the HTML tag name. I'll use modal-header. And then we want to require .default. And then the path to the component, which is components/task/modals/shared/modal header.vue. Save that. And now we can stick this on the page up here by just adding modal header. Save that. Okay, so this title that's in here, we're going to need to be able to change that for the edit task modal. So let's pass down the title as a slot. So within this modal header tag, we can just add task. And then if we open up modal header.vue, this text will be available in here as a slot. So where it says add task here, we can just change that to a slot tag, like so. Okay, it's still showing that title there. And this is being passed down from here. Okay, let's do the same for the name field now. So the name field is all inside this row here. So I'm going to cut that. And in this shared folder, I'm going to create a new file called modal taskname.vue. And I'm going to paste that markup into the template there. Save that. Back in add task.vue, we'll import this component. So I'll duplicate this one down here. Change the tag name to modal task name. And update the path here to modal taskname.vue. Save that. And we'll stick that on the page here. So modal task name. Save that. Okay, so we have an error here. It says task to submit is not defined on the instance but referenced during render. And that's because within this modal task name component, task to submit doesn't exist. So task to submit.name doesn't exist. So we can pass this down as a prop. So if we jump back to add task.view, we'll send a prop called name down. And what we're going to send there, we're going to send task to submit.name. So task to submit.name. Save that. Now in modal task name, we need to import that prop. So we'll add a props array with the prop that we want to receive, which is name. Save that. And now that we're passing this down as a prop, we can't use vModel anymore. So we need to replace that with value and set that to the prop we're sending down, name. Save that. And now we also need to change this vIf to just name. And this click handler, we also need to change task to submit.name to just name. So just the prop that we're passing down. Save that. Okay, we can now see the field on the page. Okay, so we're passing down this name field as a prop to this child component, but we're not passing it back up again to the parent component, add task.view. So how can we do that? Well, first of all, we need to listen to changes on this field. We can do that by listening to the input event. So we'll add an @input. And then within this, we'll emit an event. So we'll add $emit. And we want to emit the update event. And we want to pass to that the name of the prop, which is name. And as the second parameter, we want to pass the text that the user's entered. And that's stored in this event variable. Save that. Now, in order to listen to this on the add task component, where we've included the component here, and we've added this name prop, we need to add a modifier to that prop, which is .sync. Save that. Now, hopefully, this name prop that's in this modal task name component should be synced to task to submit.name down here. And we can check that by just spitting out task to submit on the page. So I'm just going to add a pre tag. Then inside that, I'm going to spit out task to submit. Save that. Okay, so we can see task to submit down here on the page. Hopefully, if I enter a task name now, we should see it appear down here. Yeah, that seems to be working now. Let's see if this clear button is still working. I'll just give that a click. Okay, we have an error here. It says avoid mutating a prop directly since the value will be overwritten. Okay, so if we jump back to modal task name.view, so we can't modify this prop name directly. We have to emit another update event. So within this click handler on the close button, I'll replace that with $emit, and then again, update name, and then the value we want to set it to is just an empty string. So I'll save that. I'll refresh the page, enter some text. Now if I click the clear button, it now works and we have no error. Let's create a child component for the due date field now. So we'll jump back to add task. And this row here is the due date. So we'll cut that. And we'll create a new component inside this shared folder again called modal due date.view. And I'll paste in that code, fix the indentation, then back in add task, we'll import this. So I'll duplicate this one, set the HTML tag to modal due date, update the path to modal due date.view, save that, and then we'll stick that here on the page, modal due date, save that. So we have an error here, same as before, task to submit is not defined on the instance. So let's jump to modal due date. Actually, we'll first of all pass the due date down as a prop with this sync modifier like we did here. So we want to do colon and we'll call it due date dot sync, and we're going to pass down task to submit dot due date. Save that. And then in modal due date, we have two V models here. So we need to get rid of both of those and replace them with value equals due date, which is the prop we're passing down. We need to also add that prop down here, props due date. We also need to change this task to submit.due date to just due date. Save that. So to send the due date back up to the parent component, we need to, like we did on modal task name, add these input listeners. I'll copy that from modal task name, paste it here. This time we're going to update the due date. And I'll also add this input event to this QDate component here as well. Let's break that up onto multiple lines. Save that. Okay, let's see if we can add a due date now. Okay, it's adding the date, but we still have an error. Property or method clear due date is not defined. Okay, this method, clear due date, doesn't exist within this child component. It exists within the add task component here. So what we can do is we can emit a custom event instead on this click handler on the close button. So we can just do $emit and we'll call it clear. And then back on add task.view, we can listen to that here. So we can just do @clear. So when that clear custom event is fired, and then we want to fire this clear due date method. So we can just put clear due date in there. Save that. Okay, let's refresh the page. Okay, we can now add a due date. We can see it's being synced back up to the task to submit object in the add task.view parent component. Let's do the same for the due time field now. So back in add task.view, I'm going to cut this row, which has the time field in it. Cut that. And then I'm going to create a new component in the shared folder called modal due time.view. I'll paste in that markup. This VIF directive here, I'm going to cut that out and instead put it on the component when we include it here. So I'll save that. Back in add task.view, we'll include that due time component. Update the path, modal due time.view. Add that to the page, modal due time. We'll pass down the due time. So like we did before, due time.sync equals task to submit dot due time. Save that. Now in modal due time, we'll import that prop. So props due time. We'll replace these V models with value equals due time. We'll replace this with just due time. We'll emit an update event on this close button, this clear button. So we want to emit update due time, set the value to empty string, and we'll add our input event listeners here and here. So on the import and on the pop-up as well. So at input equals emit update due time, set that to event, save that. Okay, I'll refresh the page. Okay, let's see if we can add a due time now. Great, that seems to be working. So is this clear button working? Yep, that seems to be working. Let's put this button into a child component now. So back in add task, I'm going to cut this QCard actions component, create a new component called modal buttons, add the markup I just cut, save that. Now we need to import this component, so I'll duplicate that one, import modal buttons, update this path to modal buttons, and we'll include that on the page here. Save that. Okay, let's see what happens if we try to save a task now. So just fill in the fields. Click save. Okay, we have an error here. Cannot read property validate of undefined in add task. So if we jump to add task, if we look at this submit form method, it's trying to run this validate method on the name ref. But this name ref no longer exists within this add task.view. It's down in this child component, modal task name. Here it is. So how can we get to that from this parent component, add task.view? Well, what we can do is we can add another ref to the modal task name component. We'll call that modal task name. Save that. Now we can get to refs which are within refs, or should I say we can get to child components which have refs from parent components which have refs. So if I jump back to this submit form method, instead of doing this.refs.name, we can do this.refs.modal task name, which is the ref we just created, .refs.name. And we can do the same here. So this.refs.modal task name .refs.name. Save that. Okay, let's see if we can submit a task now. Click save. Great, the task is now added to the state and added to the view. Okay, now we're ready to create the edit task modal. Okay, so we're going to create an edit task modal now. But before we do, let's just tidy up a few things. So we're still spitting out this object here on this add task modal. So let's just get rid of that. Open up the add task.view and we'll get rid of this pre element. Save that. Also, this due time field is showing all the time. It's supposed to only show if a due date has been set. So let's just fix that. So we can just add a VIF to this modal due time component here. VIF task2 submit.due date. Save that. Let's just see if that's working. That's disappeared now. If I choose a date, now the time field appears. Okay, great. Also, this add task modal is showing all the time. So let's just open up the page to do file and set show add task back to false. Save that. Now I'm going to jump back to the store file, store-tasks, and I'm going to uncomment these tasks, just so that we've got some tasks on the page to work with. Okay, so we want to add a edit task button first. We'll stick a button next to this delete button. So we want to open up the task component, which is in components, tasks, and then task.view. let's look for that delete button. Okay, there it is. So I'm just going to duplicate that right next to it, save that. Okay, they're being stacked now, so I'm going to surround those in a row. So div.row to make them side by side. Save that. Okay, I'm going to change the color to primary. Change the icon to edit. And this click handler, well, what do we want this button to do? We want it to show an edit task modal. So when the user clicks this button, we'll set a variable called show edit task to true. We haven't created this property yet, so let's stick that down here. We'll add a data function, and in there we'll add show edit task false. Set it to false to begin with. Now we're going to need a modal to show when the user clicks this button. So I'm just going to jump to the to-do page, copy this QDialog component from there for the add task modal. I'll stick that at the bottom of this QItem element. We'll change the vModel and this vClose here to show edit task instead of show add task. Save that. We're going to need an edit task component. So I'm going to jump into modals, and then I'm going to duplicate add task and rename it to edit task. And then back in the task.view, I'm going to change this to edit task. And then we're going to import that edit task component. So I'll stick a components object down here, and the tag name is going to be edit task. And the path is components / tasks / modals / edit task.view. Save that. Okay, so let's see if this button is showing that modal. Yep, it's showing that. Okay, so let's open that up now. Edit task. First of all, we need to change this heading to edit task. Save that. Now, when the user clicks on the edit button, we want to load this task information into this form. So if we click on the edit button for this go to shop task, then it should say go to shop in here and have the same date and time as well filled in. So how can we do that? Well, remember we have this task to submit object with all the same fields as the form, name, due date, and due time. And this is bound to this form. So remember, in the parent task of this component, task.view, we have this task object which contains all of the fields for the task. So we could pass this down as a prop to the edit task component and then copy the fields from that task object into this task to submit object, which would then update the fields on the form. So let's jump back to task.view and we'll pass down task to the edit task component as a prop. So I'll add a prop called task, which we'll send task to. We're also going to need the ID as well. So I'm going to pass that down as a prop as well. ID equals ID. And then in edit task, we need to add these props at the top. So task and ID. Okay. So we want to copy the fields from task into this task to submit object. So I'm going to clear out this task to submit object to begin with. And I'm going to jump to the bottom and add a mounted hook. So once this component has loaded, this edit task component, we want to copy task into task to submit. So we could use object assign to do that. We could just do object.assign. We'll assign to an empty object, and we'll assign this task to that empty object. And then we can just assign that object to task to submit. So we can just do this task to submit equals object.assign, etc. Save that. I'm just going to refresh the page. Now hopefully if I click on the edit button now, we should see the fields populated. Great, we can see all these fields now. If I click on a different task, then we see the data for that task. So how can we save this data once the user edits these fields and then clicks save? Well, if we look in store tasks.js, we already have this update task action and a corresponding mutation, which will do that for us. And this update task action expects a payload with an ID and an updates property. So we can just fire this action from our component. So I'll jump back to edit task. First of all, we need to map the update task action to this component. We're already importing map actions, and we have the map actions method here. It's currently mapping add task because we copied this from the add task component. So we don't need that. So I'll just change add task to update task. Okay, so now this update task action is available in our edit task component. And then in this submit task method, which is fired after the form is validated, we can get rid of this add task line because we're not adding a task now, we're just going to edit a task. We can get rid of that and we can just fire update task instead. So this update task. Now this is expecting an object with an ID property and a updates property. So the ID is going to be this ID that we're passing down from task.view. So set that to this .id, and updates is just going to be the fields contained within task to submit. So we can just set updates to this task to submit. Okay, save that. I'll just refresh the page. Okay, so if I click edit on this get bananas, change the title, get massive bananas, click save. Great, that's updating now. Let's just make sure we can edit the other fields as well. So I'll edit the due date and the due time. Set that to the 16th, set the time to 3 o'clock. Yep, that's updated. So now all the basic CRUD functionality of our app is working. We can add a task, we can delete a task, and we can edit a task, as well as marking a task as completed. Let's make this app even better now. Thanks for watching. Make sure you subscribe and leave a comment to let me know what you think. And if you're interested in the full course, click the link in the description. In the next and final video, we're going to be splitting our tasks up into 2 different sections, to do and completed. We're going to add some nice headings to these sections. We're also going to add a no tasks to do today banner, which will be displayed when there are no tasks left to do. We're also going to have a little look at Quasar's global event bus.